when he smiled and told me, "Take everything that belongs to you." He thought it was a gentle farewell, but what I took wasn't just personal belongings. It was the heart, the brain, and the backbone of the entire company. Days later, they finally realized they hadn't just lost an employee, they'd lost the very foundation they were standing on. 14 years of my life poured into that place, and in one afternoon, I reclaimed every last piece. The collapse that followed wasn't revenge. It was simply gravity, doing what it does when you remove the support beams. My name is Rachel Morgan, and at 38, I thought I'd seen every shade of corporate betrayal. But nothing prepared me for that Tuesday morning in Martin Hale's cramped office, where 14 years of loyalty would be dismissed with the casual cruelty of a parking ticket. "Rachel, please, sit down." Martin didn't look up from his laptop, his fingers still typing as he spoke. The office smelled of stale coffee and his overwhelming cologne, the same combination that had greeted me for over a decade. Awards lined the walls, most of them for events I'd orchestrated, though my name appeared on none of them. I settled into the worn leather chair across from his desk, the one with the broken armrest I'd been asking maintenance to fix for 3 years. Through the glass partition, I could see the production floor buzzing with activity. My team correction, what used to be my team preparing for next week's pharmaceutical conference. "We need to talk about restructuring," Martin finally said, closing his laptop with a deliberate click. His smile was the kind that never reached his eyes, the one he reserved for firing clients or vendors who'd outlived their usefulness. "The board has decided we need fresh perspectives in key positions." Fresh perspectives. The words hung in the air like smoke from a cigarette, toxic and suffocating. I watched his hands fidget with a pen, the same nervous tick he'd had when he'd promised me a promotion 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 2 years ago. "You're letting me go." It wasn't a question. After 14 years, you learn to read the signs, the avoided eye contact in the hallway, the meetings scheduled without you, the sudden interest in documenting your processes. "We're bringing in someone with more contemporary ideas," he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "Melissa Cartwright, recent graduate from Northwestern, top of her class in digital marketing. She starts Monday. 22 years old, I'd later learn, the daughter of a board member's golf buddy. Her entire experience consisted of managing her sorority's Instagram account and a summer internship at her uncle's startup. "I've been here since this company had 4 employees," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "I built the technical infrastructure from nothing. I've saved your ass from disaster more times than—" "And we're grateful for your contributions," Martin interrupted, sliding a folder across the desk. "This is a generous severance package, 2 weeks' pay, continuation of health benefits through the end of the month. More than fair, considering your position was at-will employment." I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I studied the man who'd once called me the backbone of Summit Vision at the company Christmas party. 3 vodkas deep and honest for once in his life. Now he looked through me like I was already gone, already replaced by someone younger, cheaper, more contemporary. "When?" I asked. "Effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear out your desk." He paused, then added with that manufactured concern that made my skin crawl. "Take your time, of course. Get everything that belongs to you." The words were meant to be dismissive, a throwaway courtesy to soften the blow, but as they left his mouth, something shifted in my chest. Not anger that would come later. This was colder, more calculated, a plan forming in the space between heartbeats. "Everything that belongs to me," I repeated slowly, tasting each word. Of course, he was already opening his laptop again, moving on to the next item on his agenda. "We'll need your keycard and company phone, naturally, but personal items, certainly take those." Personal items, I almost laughed. After 14 years, the line between personal and professional had blurred beyond recognition. How many of my own resources had I poured into this company? How many times had I used my credit card when the company account was temporarily frozen? How many pieces of equipment bore my name, purchased with my money when Martin claimed the budget couldn't accommodate non-essentials? "I'll need a few hours," I said, standing, "to properly collect everything." "Take until 5, he offered magnanimously, as if he was doing me a favor. Melissa will need the office ready by Monday. As I reached the door, he called out one more time. Rachel, no hard feelings, right? It's just business. I turned back, giving him the same smile I'd perfected over years of client presentations and crisis management. Of course, Martin, just business. Walking back through the production floor, I saw it all with new eyes. The lighting rigs I'd bought when we couldn't afford rentals. The soundboard I'd purchased with my bonus, the only one I'd ever received. The cameras, the cables, the portable generators, all carefully labeled with my name in permanent marker, a habit my coworkers had mocked as paranoid and possessive. They were about to learn it was neither. The memories came flooding back as I stood in the equipment room, running my fingers over the gear that had become as familiar as my own reflection. 14 years compressed into moments, each piece of equipment a milestone in my journey from nobody to the person who secretly held this company together. I'd started as a junior coordinator, fresh from a failed stint at a nonprofit, desperate for stability. Summit Vision Productions was barely a company then, just Martin, his business partner who'd flee within 6 months, a part-time accountant, and me. Our office was a converted warehouse that leaked when it rained, and our first event was a disaster that nearly ended before it began. The client wanted a product launch with live streaming capabilities. Martin had promised the world, as always, without checking if we could deliver. 3 days before the event, we discovered our rented equipment was double booked. Martin's solution, figure it out. Rachel, that's why I hired you. So I did. I maxed out my credit card on a basic camera and audio setup from a closing electronics store. Spent 36 hours straight teaching myself live streaming software. The event went off perfectly. The client signed a 3-year contract. Martin took the credit and a bonus. I got a pat on the back and a promise that the company would reimburse me when cash flow improved. That reimbursement never came, but I'd learned something valuable in this company. If you wanted something done right, you did it yourself, with your own resources. Over the years, the pattern repeated, a soundboard here, lighting rigs there. When competitors started offering LED displays, I bought 2 with my savings, telling myself it was an investment in my career. When virtual events became essential during the pandemic, I purchased streaming equipment, professional cameras, and encoding hardware all from my own pocket because Martin insisted we needed to stay lean while he drove a new BMW. Why do you always write your name on everything? Dana had asked once, watching me label a new wireless microphone set. Afraid someone's going to steal your precious gear. Just being organized, I'd replied, but the truth was more practical. I'd learned from experience that company property had a way of walking off, but items clearly marked with "Property of Rachel Morgan" in permanent marker stayed put. It was protection, not paranoia. The labeling became my signature, R. Morgan. On every cable, Rachel M. on each camera bag, my full name and phone number on the expensive items. Coworkers joked about it, called me territorial, possessive. Martin once laughed at a client dinner, saying, Rachel marks her territory like a dog. Everything in our warehouse has her name on it. Everyone had laughed. I'd smiled and played along, knowing they had no idea how literal that statement was. Because I'd kept everything meticulously documented. Receipts filed in chronological order, credit card statements highlighted, emails where I'd informed Martin of purchases. His responses always the same. Whatever you think is best. Rachel, you know I trust your judgment. Never authorizing reimbursement, never offering company funds. Just vague approval that kept the liability on me while he reaped the benefits. The virtual event system alone had cost me $23,000 over 2 years. The lighting rigs, another $15,000. Sound equipment, cameras, cables, generators, editing software licenses all told. I'd invested nearly $70,000 of my own money into Summit Vision's infrastructure. My salary had never reflected my true role. While Martin introduced me as an event coordinator to keep my pay grade low, I was simultaneously the technical director, crisis manager, client relations lead, and the only person who knew how to operate 90% of our equipment. When other companies tried to poach me, Martin would suddenly remember my value, offering tiny raises and grand promises about partnership opportunities that never materialized. Your family, Rachel, he'd say, Why would you leave your family? Family. The word tasted bitter now. Family doesn't replace you with someone who wasn't even born when you started building their empire. I'd trained every new hire, created every operational manual, established every vendor relationship. When the pandemic hit and events went virtual, I was the one working 18-hour days to pivot our entire business model. When we landed the pharmaceutical giant as a client, it was because I'd spent 6 months courting their events director, not because of Martin's golf course networking. But my biggest mistake was believing that indispensability meant security, that being the backbone meant you couldn't be removed. I'd confused being needed with being valued, thinking that the person who kept the lights on would never be left in the dark. Standing there, surrounded by equipment that bore my name, I realized the beautiful irony of it all. Martin had built his company on my foundation, my investment, my expertise, and in his arrogance, he'd just given me permission to take it all back. Take everything that belongs to you, he'd said. Oh, Martin, if only you knew what you'd just authorized. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and 14 years of receipts, every purchase meticulously documented, every email printed and highlighted. The preparation wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine. If Martin wanted me gone, fine, but I'd leave exactly as he'd suggested with everything that belonged to me. I arrived at the office at 6:30 the next morning, 2.5 hours before anyone else would show up. The security guard, Tom, barely looked up from his newspaper. "Early morning, Ms. Morgan." "Big project to wrap up," I said, wheeling in the first of several dollies I'd rented. He nodded, used to seeing me at odd hours, solving problems before most people knew they existed. The equipment room was my first stop. I'd organized it myself, knew every serial number, every warranty date, every quirk of each piece. The LED panels went first $12,000 worth, purchased when Martin claimed the company couldn't afford luxuries. The wireless microphone systems followed. Then the 4K cameras I'd bought during a Black Friday sale with my own credit card. Each item carefully wrapped, labeled with its corresponding receipt taped to the outside. I wasn't stealing. I was methodically, legally, retrieving my property. By 8:45, I'd filled my SUV twice, each trip documented with timestamps on my phone. The heavy equipment would need the rental truck I'd reserved for noon. I was disconnecting the main soundboard when Dana walked in. "Rachel, what are you doing?" "Following instructions," I replied, not looking up from the cables I was coiling. "Martin told me to take everything that belongs to me." She laughed nervously. "You can't be serious. That's like half our equipment." 73%, actually. I showed her my spreadsheet. "I've been keeping track." Dana's face went pale as she scanned the list. The streaming setup, the lighting rigs. "Rachel, we have the Pharmatech conference next week. It's a 3-day hybrid event with 1,200 virtual attendees." "I'm aware. I designed the run of show." I continued packing, each movement deliberate and calm. "Melissa starts Monday. I'm sure her contemporary ideas will include sourcing new equipment." "This is insane. Martin will what?" I turned to face her. "Fire me. That ship has sailed. Sue me for taking my own property that I have receipts for property with my name literally written on it." By 10 o'clock, word had spread. Small clusters of employees gathered in doorways, whispering and staring as I wheeled out load after load. Some looked shocked, others almost impressed. A few seemed to be mentally calculating how many times I'd saved their projects with equipment the company didn't actually own. Martin arrived at 10:30, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and something that might have been fear. "Rachel, what the hell is this?" "Following your instructions," I said pleasantly, handing him a folder. "Here's a copy of all receipts for the equipment I'm removing. You'll notice each one was purchased with my personal funds. There's also a summary spreadsheet showing that I've requested reimbursement 47 times over the years, all denied or ignored." He flipped through the pages, his face reddening. "This is sabotage. You can't—" "Actually, I can—" Page 12 is the email where you explicitly stated, "Whatever equipment you feel is necessary, handle it as you see fit. The company trusts your judgment." Page 18 is where you told me to take everything that belongs to you. I'm simply complying. "That's not what I meant, and you know it." "Then you should have been clearer. I picked up another case of wireless transmitters. Words matter in business. Martin, you taught me that. He grabbed my arm as I passed. Leave the streaming system. Just that. We'll work out a rental agreement. Pay you fairly. My consulting rate is $800 per day for equipment rental, I said, removing his hand, plus a $5,000 setup fee, per event, paid in advance. That's extortion. That's market rate for last-minute equipment rental with specialized knowledge. Check with any vendor, I smiled. Though most won't have availability this close to a major event. By noon, the production floor looked like it had been stripped for parts. Empty racks where cameras had been, blank spaces where monitors had sat, cables gone, adapters vanished. Even the label maker purchased with my own money packed away. Martin made one last attempt as I loaded the final items. Rachel, be reasonable. You're destroying everything we built together. No, I corrected, securing the truck's gate. I'm taking everything I built. What you're left with is exactly what you contributed: an empty warehouse and big promises, the same thing you had 14 years ago, before I walked in. The clients will expect their events to run smoothly. That's your problem now, or rather, Melissa's. I handed him my keycard and company phone. Tell her the login passwords are in the manual I wrote. Oh wait, I wrote that on my personal laptop. Guess that's mine too. The realization finally hit him then, written across his face in pure panic. It wasn't just the equipment, it was the knowledge, the relationships, the invisible architecture I'd built that kept Summit Vision functional, and I was taking all of it with me. The Pharmatech conference was 6 days away. From my apartment, I could watch the disaster unfold in real time through Dana's increasingly frantic texts and the industry WhatsApp groups that lit up like Christmas trees. Thursday, 3:15 p.m. Rachel, Melissa just asked what a streaming encoder is. Please tell me you're joking about taking everything. Thursday, 4:45 p.m. Martin's calling every rental company in the city. They're all booked. He's screaming at everyone. Friday, 9:20 a.m. Melissa tried to use the backup laptop for presentations. Forgot you bought that too. She's crying in the bathroom. I didn't respond to any of them. I was too busy setting up my new home office, testing each piece of equipment, making sure everything was ready for what I knew was coming. The Pharmatech conference wasn't just any event. It was Summit Vision's flagship contract, worth 40% of their annual revenue, 3 days, 1,200 virtual attendees, 6 pharmaceutical companies presenting new drugs to investors and medical professionals. The kind of event where a 5-minute technical failure could cost millions in lost deals. By Saturday, the panic had escalated. Dana called me directly, her voice shaking. Rachel, I'm begging you. Martin found some equipment to rent, but none of us know how to set it up. The interface is completely different. Melissa's been watching YouTube tutorials for 16 hours straight. That sounds like a steep learning curve, I said neutrally, watching my cat play with a cable tie. The client's advance team arrives Monday for setup. If they see this chaos, we're finished. You know that. I did know that. I'd managed the Pharmatech relationship for 3 years, built their trust through flawless execution of increasingly complex events. Their events director, Patricia Stern, had my personal cell number for emergencies. She hadn't called yet, which meant Martin was still trying to hide the crisis. Sunday arrived with a new wave of desperation. Martin himself texted, "Name your price." I didn't reply. Sunday, 2:30 p.m. Rachel, please. We need help. The company will go under. Still nothing from me. Sunday, 8:45 p.m. Fine. Whatever you want. Full reinstatement. Partnership. Name it. I finally responded, I don't want reinstatement. I want a consulting contract. My terms, non-negotiable. Monday morning came like a hurricane. Patricia Stern's advance team arrived at 9 a.m. to find a production floor in complete chaos. Rental equipment still in boxes. Cables everywhere like electronic spaghetti. Melissa frantically clicking through software she didn't understand while 3 technical manuals lay open around her. Patricia called me at 10:20 a.m. Rachel, what the hell is happening over there? I've got Martin sweating through his suit and some child telling me she needs another day to familiarize herself with the workflow. We go live in 48 hours. I'm no longer with Summit Vision, Patricia. They restructured last week. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. You're joking. I'm not. Melissa Cartwright is my replacement. Recent graduate, top of her class in digital marketing. Digital marketing. For a technical production role, Patricia's voice could have frozen vodka. Rachel, I need this event to work. My CEO is flying in from Switzerland. We have FDA officials attending virtually. This cannot fail. I understand completely. If you need technical consulting, I'm available through my new company, RM Event Solutions. I can email you my rates. Another pause. Send them immediately. I sent my consulting contract within minutes. Triple my old salary for a 3-day engagement, plus equipment rental, plus a rush fee. Patricia signed it without negotiation and forwarded it to Martin with a note that probably scorched his screen. Martin called me 30 seconds later. This is highway robbery. This is business, I corrected. You have 2 options: sign the contract and have a successful event, or don't sign and explain to Pharmatech why their flagship conference failed. Your choice. But if I sign this, you come back afterward. We work out a permanent arrangement. No, this is a one-time emergency consultation. After this, Melissa's on her own. I could hear him breathing, calculating, realizing he had no leverage. Fine, but you train her during the event. Training isn't included in the scope. That's an additional $10,000. You're destroying me. I'm charging market rate for specialized emergency services. You're free to find another consultant who knows your setup, your clients, and can start immediately. He signed the contract at 11:47 a.m. By noon, I was back in the building I'd been escorted out of 6 days earlier, but now as a consultant charging more per hour than Martin had paid me per day. The staff looked at me like I was performing magic, turning chaos into order with an efficiency that made Melissa shrink further into herself with each passing minute. I set up the streaming infrastructure, configured the backup systems, tested every connection twice, all with my own equipment, now being rented back to the company that had refused to pay for it originally. Every piece of gear with my name still visible in permanent marker, a constant reminder of who really owned this show. Patricia pulled me aside during a break. Rachel, I had no idea about the restructuring. If I'd been consulted... It's fine, I said, though we both knew it wasn't. These things happen. Do they... She studied me carefully. How long are you available for consulting? As long as needed. My schedule's quite open these days. She smiled then, the kind of smile that meant decisions had been made. Good to know. We have our entire year of events to plan. I'll be in touch. Behind us, Melissa was frantically taking notes as I explained. For the 3rd time, how to switch between presentation feeds. Martin stood in the corner, his phone buzzing constantly board members, I assumed, asking why their flagship event was now costing 3 times the budgeted amount. The first day of the Pharmatech conference started at 7 a.m. sharp. I'd been on site since 5:30, running final checks on equipment that I knew better than my own heartbeat. Melissa shadowed me, her notebook already filled with incomprehensible scribbles, her hands shaking as she held her 3rd cup of coffee. The main feed keeps dropping frames, she said, her voice pitched high with panic. I did exactly what you showed me, but... You're running it through the wrong encoder setting, I said, fixing it in 3 clicks. The backup system can't handle 4K at 60 frames. You need to drop it to 30 or switch to the primary. But you said the primary was for... That was yesterday's configuration. Today we have twice the virtual attendance. Everything needs to be rebalanced. I didn't add that I'd explained this twice already. At $800 an hour, I could afford to be patient. By 9 a.m., we were live. 1,200 virtual attendees logged in from around the world, watching pharmaceutical executives present groundbreaking research on new cancer treatments. The stakes couldn't have been higher, and everyone in the control room knew it. Then, at 9:43, disaster struck. The main presentation screen went black. Melissa froze, staring at the monitor like it might fix itself through sheer will. Switch to backup, Martin barked from behind us. I don't... Melissa's fingers hovered over the keyboard, paralyzed. I reached over and executed the switch in 2 seconds. The feed resumed before most attendees even noticed the glitch. But in those 2 seconds, I saw Martin's face cycle through terror, relief, and the dawning realization of how thoroughly screwed he was without me. The calls started coming during the lunch break. Martin first. We need to discuss a permanent arrangement. No, we don't. Contract ends Wednesday at 5 p.m. Then Patricia. Rachel, the stream quality is exceptional. My CEO is impressed. Can we schedule a call about our Q2 events? Absolutely. I'll send you my availability. But the call that mattered came at 2:17 p.m. from an unknown number. Ms. This is James Crawford, CEO of MedTech Solutions. I'm watching the Pharmatech conference, and I must say, the production quality is outstanding. I understand you're now independent. MedTech Solutions, Summit Vision's second largest client, worth another 30% of their revenue. James Crawford, who Martin had been courting for 5 years without success. That's correct, Mr. Crawford, RM Event Solutions, full-service event production and consulting. Excellent. We're unhappy with our current provider. Watching today's conference, seeing what's possible with the right expertise. Well, let's just say I'd like to discuss moving our annual symposium to someone who actually knows what they're doing. I glanced across the control room at Martin, who was gesticulating wildly at Melissa about something on screen. I'd be delighted to discuss your needs. Should we schedule a call for Thursday? Perfect. Oh, and Rachel. I heard about the restructuring at Summit Vision. Their loss, clearly. The rest of day one continued with the precision of a Swiss watch, my Swiss watch, running on my time, at my price, every successful transition, every smooth segment, every satisfied virtual attendee was a reminder to Martin of what he'd thrown away. At 6 p.m., as we wrapped the first day, the head of Pharmatech's European division approached me. Exceptional work today. Rachel, Patricia tells me you're available for direct contracts now. I am. We have a situation. Our Berlin conference next month, the production company just canceled. Bankruptcy. We need someone reliable, someone who's proven themselves. He glanced pointedly at Martin, who was within earshot. Someone we trust. I can send you a proposal tonight. Martin waited until everyone else had left the control room. Rachel, this is ridiculous. You're deliberately poaching clients. I'm responding to inquiries, I corrected, packing up my personal laptop. Your clients are approaching me. There's a difference. Because you're here, showing off, making me look incompetent. No, Martin, you did that yourself when you replaced 14 years of expertise with a digital marketing degree. I pulled up my consulting invoice on my tablet. Day 1 of 3. Would you like to process payment now or wait until the contract completion? His jaw clenched. This is extortion. This is capitalism. You should recognize it. It's the same system you used when you paid me $40,000 a year to do the job of 3 people. I smiled. The only difference is now I'm the one setting the prices. When this event is over, you'll still need someone to run every other event you've booked. Melissa can't do it. Dana's great with logistics but doesn't know the technical side. Your freelancer pool won't work with you anymore because you're always 60 days late on payment. I shouldered my bag. Face it, Martin, you built your company on my foundation, and now that foundation is gone. My phone buzzed with another unknown number, another potential client, probably, who'd been watching the flawless stream and wondering who was behind it. I let it go to voicemail, making sure Martin could see the notification. Day 2 starts at 7 a.m., I reminded him. Don't be late. Every minute of delay costs you. What was it you said? Oh yes, whatever the market will bear. As I walked out, I passed Melissa in the hallway, surrounded by technical manuals. Her eyes red from stress and exhaustion. For a moment, I felt sorry for her. She'd been sold a lie, thrown into a position she was completely unqualified for. The audio levels need to be preset tonight, I told her. Check Section 12 in the manual. There is no Section 12, she said miserably. It only goes to 11. Oh, right. Section 12 was in the updated manual. The one I wrote last month. I paused. On my personal laptop. Her face crumpled. Behind her, through the glass doors, I could see Martin on his phone, his free hand pulling at his hair. Tomorrow would be worse. Day 3 would be catastrophic, and everyone knew it. Day 2 of the conference started with Martin waiting for me in the parking lot at 6:45 a.m. a contract in his hand, and desperation in his eyes. 6-month consulting agreement, he said without preamble. 50% above your old salary. You train Melissa, help transition the accounts, leave on good terms. No. I walked past him toward the building. Rachel, be reasonable. The company needed me last week. You decided it didn't. I badged in with my temporary consultant pass. My rate for extended contracts is now double what you're offering, and I choose my clients. Double that's my rate. Take it or leave it. But decide fast. Patricia Stern is waiting for my proposal for their entire fiscal year. Inside, the control room was already in crisis. Melissa was on the phone with tech support for the rental equipment. Near tears. They're saying the license expired, but we paid for 3 days. I looked at the screen. You paid for 3 days starting from when you activated it. You activated it Saturday for testing. Today's Tuesday. License expired at midnight. Can you fix it? Martin demanded. I can, for an additional rush fee. How much? $5,000. For a license renewal. For emergency procurement and configuration of a new streaming license during a live event with 1,200 attendees watching, I pulled out my phone. I can have it fixed in 30 minutes, or Melissa can wait on hold with tech support for 2 hours. Your choice. He nodded, defeated. I made the call, used my vendor relationships to expedite a new license, and had us back online before the opening keynote. Patricia Stern, watching from the client viewing room, gave me a subtle thumbs up. During the morning break, Dana pulled me aside. Rachel, this is insane. Everyone knows what's happening. The whole industry is talking about it. What are they saying? That Martin's an idiot, that Summit Vision is collapsing, that you're about to become the most sought-after technical producer in the city. She paused. Is it true you're taking the MedTech account? James Crawford called. We're discussing possibilities. That's 40% of our revenue, combined with Pharmatech pulling out. Pharmatech's pulling out? Dana nodded. Patricia told Martin this morning, after this event, they're opening bidding for a new production partner. Made it clear you'd be getting the RFP. I did the math quickly. 70% of Summit Vision's revenue, potentially walking out the door with me. The remaining clients were small, inconsistent, or already shopping around. Martin wouldn't survive the quarter. At lunch, my phone rang. It was Robert Chen from the board of directors. I let it go to voicemail, but his message was clear. Ms. Morgan, we need to discuss the situation at Summit Vision. The board is prepared to make significant changes to retain your services. Too late. Robert, you should have made those changes last week. The afternoon brought new chaos. The main presenter's slides corrupted. The backup feed failed. And a virtual attendee accidentally unmuted during a critical moment, broadcasting their argument with their teenager to 1,200 medical professionals. Each crisis required my intervention, each solution adding to my invoice. But the real moment came at 3:30 p.m., when Melissa finally broke. I can't do this, she screamed, throwing her headset across the control room. I don't understand any of it. The protocols, the systems, the backup configurations. It's impossible. She ran out, leaving dead silence in her wake. Martin looked at me, then at the live event still streaming, then at the door Melissa had fled through. Fix this, he said quietly. My contract specifies technical consulting, not HR management. Rachel, please. I looked at him, really looked at him. Suit wrinkled, hair disheveled, the confident executive demeanor completely shattered. This was the man who'd built his success on my work, who'd taken credit for my innovations, who'd thought I was replaceable. I'll maintain the stream, I said finally, but I want something in writing. What? An admission, in writing, that Summit Vision's technical infrastructure was built and funded primarily by me, that the company's success was directly dependent on my expertise and personal investment. That's my price for keeping this event running smoothly for the next 2 hours. Otherwise, I walk now, and you can explain to Patricia why her FDA officials are watching a blank screen. He stared at me for 30 seconds, calculating odds, looking for alternatives, finding none. Fine. I pulled up a simple document on my laptop, typed out the statement, and turned it toward him. He signed it with shaking hands. The rest of day 2 proceeded flawlessly. I handled every transition, managed every feed, anticipated every problem before it occurred. The attendees had no idea that behind their smooth professional conference experience, a company was imploding in real time. At 6 p.m., as we wrapped, Patricia approached with a folder. The RFP for our annual contract, 12 events, international scope, budget of $2.4 million, she handed it to me, making sure Martin could see. We need someone who can guarantee consistency and quality, someone we trust. I'll have a proposal to you by Friday. She smiled. Excellent. Oh, and Martin. She turned to him. Thank you for helping us identify the real talent in your organization. We'll be sure to spread the word about Rachel's new venture. After Patricia left, Martin slumped in his chair. You've destroyed everything. No, I corrected. Powering down my equipment that would leave with me tomorrow. I've taken back what was mine. You destroyed everything when you confused price with value. When you thought 22 years old and cheap was better than 38 and proven. The company won't survive this. The company never existed without me. You just refused to see it. I started packing up cables, each one labeled with my name. You have one more day of my contracted time. After that, you're on your own. Melissa quit, in case you didn't notice. So tomorrow, it's just you, Dana, and whoever else you can scramble to find. We need to negotiate. No, we don't. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., I walk out with my equipment, my expertise, and apparently, most of your clients. You'll have your empty warehouse and your contemporary ideas. I paused at the door. Exactly what you wanted, right? The final day of the PharmaTech conference arrived with an unexpected visitor. James Crawford from MedTech Solutions stood in the control room at 7 a.m., having driven 2 hours to see the production in person. I wanted to observe the master at work, he said, shaking my hand while deliberately ignoring Martin. Patricia Stern speaks very highly of your capabilities. Just doing my job, Mr. Crawford? No, he corrected, watching me orchestrate the morning setup with practiced efficiency. You're doing what 3 people should be doing, with equipment you personally own, fixing problems that shouldn't exist. That's not a job, that's a miracle. Martin tried to interject. Mr. Crawford, Summit Vision has always been committed to what? Replacing irreplaceable talent with nepotism hires. James didn't even look at him. I know exactly what happened here, Martin. Everyone does. The entire industry is laughing at you. The morning session launched without a hitch. 6 speakers, 3 panel discussions, 2 virtual Q&A sessions with FDA regulators, all flowing seamlessly under my direction. Dana worked beside me, handling logistics while I managed the technical side. She'd already quietly asked if I'd need an operations manager for my new company. At 11 a.m., my phone buzzed with an email from Patricia Stern. The subject line made Martin, who was hovering nearby, Go Pale Recontract Transfer Authorization. I opened it and read aloud, making sure Martin could hear, Rachel, legal has approved the immediate transfer of our account to RM Event Solutions upon completion of today's event. Contract signed and attached. Welcome aboard officially. You can't do this, Martin said weakly. There are non-compete clauses, which don't apply to independent contractors, I reminded him. You fired me as an employee. Remember, I'm now a consultant, free to work with anyone. James Crawford laughed. Martin, you really didn't think this through. Did you even consult legal before restructuring? The answer was obvious in Martin's silence. By lunch, word had spread throughout the conference. Attendees who'd never normally noticed production were asking about the brilliant technical direction. 2 more companies approached me about their upcoming events. My phone had 37 unread emails, all inquiries about my services. At 2 p.m., the board of directors called Martin. I could hear his side of the conversation through the thin wall of the conference room. Yes, sir. I understand. No, she won't reconsider. The clients are, yes, most of them. I realize that. He emerged looking like he'd aged 5 years in 15 minutes. The board wants to meet with you. I'm busy running your event. After, please, they're prepared to offer. There's nothing they can offer that I'd accept. I adjusted the audio levels for the afternoon keynote. I spent 14 years building their company while they ignored my value. Now they want to panic buy what they threw away, no. Rachel, without you, Summit Vision dies. Summit Vision died the moment you told me to take everything that belonged to me. It's just taking a few days to stop breathing. The afternoon's grand finale was a virtual networking session with breakout rooms for 1,200 attendees. The kind of complex technical orchestration that had taken me years to master. I executed it flawlessly. Every transition smooth, every connection stable. James Crawford watched it all, taking notes. Incredible. Our annual symposium has 3,000 virtual attendees. Can you handle that scale? With the right equipment and team, absolutely. Whatever you need, budget's approved. We want you exclusive for our major events. Exclusive. The word hung in the air like a death sentence for Summit Vision. MedTech alone would keep me busy 8 months of the year. Add pharmatech and the other inquiries, and I'd need to hire staff within the month. At 4:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the contract ended, Martin made his final plea. Name your price, any price, CEO position, 51% ownership, whatever it takes. I was disconnecting my equipment, each cable coiled perfectly, each component returning to its case. Martin, do you know what your biggest mistake was? Firing you. No. Your biggest mistake was thinking that what I did was easy, that anyone young and eager could learn it, that experience and expertise were just overpriced commodities. I sealed the last case. You thought you were paying for a service. You were actually paying for 14 years of accumulated knowledge, relationships, and problem-solving ability, and you valued all of that at less than a new graduate's starting salary. I was wrong. I admit it. Let me fix this. You can't fix this, because even now, you're not sorry you fired me. You're sorry it has consequences. I pulled up my final invoice on the tablet. $73,000 for 3 days' work, due immediately. He signed the payment authorization without even looking at it. What choice did he have? As 5 p.m. approached, I wheeled out the last of my equipment. The production floor looked exactly as it had the day I was fired, empty, echoing, devoid of the infrastructure that made it functional. Dana helped me load the truck, having already submitted her resignation effective immediately. Patricia Stern and James Crawford stood by the entrance, both holding contracts for my new company. Behind them, representatives from 3 other companies waited with business cards extended. "Oh, Martin," I called back as I reached the door. "Robert from the board left you a voicemail. Something about an emergency meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. Good luck with that." The last thing I saw as I drove away was Martin standing in the empty warehouse. Cell phone pressed to his ear. Probably calling rental companies that were already closed, staffing agencies that couldn't help, clients who'd already made other arrangements. He'd told me to leave nothing behind when I quit. So I didn't. I took everything that mattered, the knowledge, the relationships, the reputation, the equipment, and most importantly, the understanding of my own worth. Summit Vision would file for bankruptcy within 6 weeks. I knew because Dana told me, over champagne in my new office. As we celebrated landing our 5th major client, the industry newsletters would cite failure to retain key talent and critical infrastructure dependencies as the primary causes. But I knew the truth. The company collapsed because it was built on a foundation it never acknowledged, never valued, and ultimately, never owned. They collapsed because when I left, I followed instructions perfectly. I left nothing behind. 3 weeks later, I stood in the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton, watching my team prepare for our first major event under the RM Event Solutions banner. Dana managed logistics with her signature precision. 2 new technical assistants I'd poached from competitors ran cable with practiced efficiency, and every piece of equipment bore fresh labels, property of RM Event Solutions. The client was Global Tech Innovations, a company Martin had pitched to unsuccessfully for 7 years. They'd called me directly after hearing about the pharmatech success, offering a 3-year exclusive contract for their quarterly showcases. The CEO had been blunt. "We want whoever made that conference run so smoothly. Price is secondary to quality." As I adjusted the main camera angle, My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Martin Hale had updated his profile, seeking new opportunities in business development. Summit Vision's warehouse had a for lease sign out front. I knew because I'd driven past it that morning on my way to pick up new equipment purchased with the revenue from just 2 weeks of operations. This time, every receipt had my company name on it, every asset properly registered, every investment building my own empire instead of someone else's. "Rachel, we're ready for the tech rehearsal," Dana called out. She'd taken a 30% pay raise to join me, along with equity in the company, real equity, not the empty promises Martin had dangled for years. The event was flawless. 3,000 virtual attendees, 17 speakers, 4 simultaneous translation channels, and 0 technical issues. The client's event director pulled me aside during the closing reception. "This is what we've been looking for," she said. "Professional, seamless, invisible excellence. How did Summit Vision let you go?" "They didn't let me go," I corrected. "They pushed me out, and in doing so, they pushed themselves off a cliff." She laughed. "Their loss, our gain. We'd like to discuss expanding our contract. Our sister companies in Europe and Asia need this level of production." International expansion. 3 weeks into independence, and I was already scaling beyond what Summit Vision had achieved in 15 years. As the ballroom emptied and my team broke down the equipment, I thought about that moment in Martin's office when he'd dismissed 14 years with a folder and a fake smile. He'd thought he was cutting costs, streamlining operations, bringing in fresh blood. Instead, he'd performed a perfect corporate suicide, precise and self-inflicted. The industry newsletters had been brutal. "Summit Vision Collapse, a case study in valuation failure," read one headline. Another, "How to Lose Everything in 3 Days, the Martin Hale Masterclass." The stories all contained the same thread, a company that confused irreplaceable with expendable, that mistook price for value, that believed experience could be YouTubed and expertise could be hired fresh out of college. My phone rang, unknown number, but I recognized the area code, Summit Vision's neighborhood. "Ms. Morgan, this is Jennifer Walsh from Titan Events. We're moving into the old Summit Vision space next month. I heard you might have some insights about the venue." Titan Events. They'd swooped in to grab Summit Vision's remaining contracts at bankruptcy prices, hired most of the staff Martin had laid off in his final desperate weeks. The circle of corporate life. "I'd be happy to consult," I said. "My venue assessment rate is $1,200. For a phone call." "For 14 years of accumulated knowledge about that space, but if you prefer, I'm sure YouTube has some great videos on warehouse conversion." She laughed. "Point taken. Can we schedule for tomorrow?" After the call, I stood in the empty ballroom, surrounded by my equipment, my team, my success. Each case, each cable, each piece of technology represented not just an investment, but a declaration I know my worth. Martin had told me to leave nothing behind, thinking it was a dismissal. He hadn't realized it was permission. Permission to take my value with me, to stop subsidizing someone else's success with my expertise and investment. The truth about revenge is that the best kind isn't planned, it's natural consequence. I didn't destroy Summit Vision. I simply stopped holding it up. The collapse was just gravity, doing what it does when you remove the foundation. My phone lit up with another notification. Patricia Stern had tagged RM Event Solutions in a LinkedIn post. "When you find exceptional talent, you hold on to it. When you lose it to ego and short-sightedness, you watch your competition thrive. Proud to work with Rachel Morgan and her team. Excellence recognizes excellence." Below it, dozens of comments from industry professionals. Former Summit Vision clients announcing their partnerships with RM Event Solutions. Competitors offering collaboration opportunities. Vendors excited to work with someone who actually pays on time. I smiled, not from schadenfreude, but from satisfaction. The kind that comes from knowing your worth and demanding it be recognized. The kind that comes from building something with your name on it literally and figuratively. As I locked the ballroom doors and headed to my car, I passed a young woman in the hotel lobby, portfolio in hand, probably heading to an interview. She looked eager, hungry, ready to accept whatever was offered just to get her foot in the door. I recognized that look. I'd worn it once. "Excuse me," I called out. She turned. "Whatever they offer you, Ask for 20% more and get everything in writing. She looked confused but nodded. Thank you. And one more thing, I added. If you invest your own money in their success, make sure your name is on it. Literally, permanent marker. Trust me on that. She smiled, still puzzled but grateful. Maybe she'd understand someday. Maybe she wouldn't need to. As for me, I drove home to my apartment, where my home office held the infrastructure of my new empire. Tomorrow I had 3 client calls, 2 proposals to write, and interviews for 4 new positions. RM Event Solutions was hiring. We paid fairly, credited accurately, and valued what people brought to the table. And if someone ever told one of my employees to take everything that belongs to you, well, they'd leave with their dignity, their expertise, and their value intact. Because that's what happens when you build a company that recognizes what really matters, not the equipment or the contracts or the warehouse space, but the people who make it all work. The people who are the foundation. The people who, when they leave, take everything with them. Because everything that matters, it was always theirs to begin with. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment, and let's connect. If this tale of workplace justice resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts or experiences below. Have you ever been undervalued at work? How did you reclaim your worth? Let's discuss in the comments.